pippensplugins.com, and today I want to walk you through how the templating system for the purchase receipts in Easy Digital Downloads works. This is a kind of cool system that is really flexible and allows you as the shop owner who is selling digital products through the plugin to customize the way that your purchase receipts appears when it is sent out to your buyers. All the emails are sent out in HTML, so you can do just about anything you want. But anyway, so this templating system is pretty cool because it shows a lot of the examples that I've been encouraging and talking about for a long time about building modular plugins. So this is one particular piece of the plugin that's very extensible. So you can modify it and you can register your own templates, you can design your own, etc. So I want to walk you through how that process works and kind of what I did to build it. So first of all, this templating system is what allows us to have nice emails that look like this. So if you were looking at this in your email client, this is what you would see after purchasing a product. And we have a whole variety of these. These extra templates are actually provided through the add-on, but all the add-on does is simply register its own template. So you can register your own as well. And it's this whole process of how this works that I want to go through and show you. So for example, here's another template that we have. And all it is adjusting the HTML and the styling, the background images, etc. So let's go ahead and dive into the code and look and see how this works. So first of all, we have three sections. We have an action, which is basically going to send out an email. It's going to trigger the email be sent. And that's what we see right here. It's just a simple function that is attached to an action that says, hey, when we receive this action, let's go ahead and send our email. And you can see that right here in this function, EDD email purchase receipt. So that function is pretty simple. All it does is generate the email. Now let's take a look at that function just so that we see it. And here it is. It's a rather large function, but basically from here to here, all we're doing is setting up information about the user. And then we have three functions: a header, a main content, and the footer. And that's where everything really happens. So we set up a header for the email, we set up a footer for the email, and then in this EDD get email body, we have a lot of stuff that's happening in terms of setting up our template. So let's go ahead and take a look over at that function right now. So let's find that EDD get email content header or body. So first of all, here's our header. You can see right here, and it's doing nothing more than opening our HTML tags basically. It's also got an action hook in there. Then we have our body, which sets up some default email content, and then it uses a function called EDD email template tags. And that basically takes all of the data from the purchase receipt, from the settings, and so anything like a tag such as the buyer name, the download links, etc., get replaced. And then the last thing that happens is we return apply filters, EDD purchase receipt. Email body is simply the contents of the email, and then the payment ID and the payment data. So this filter is what allows everything to happen, this EDD purchase receipt. So this allows us to tie in and wrap our own stuff around email body. So basically we can set up a function that takes the main email body, which is nothing more than plain text, it's just the content of the email, and we can wrap it in whatever we want. We have the email header and the email footer, which set up our opening and our closing HTML. So because we have the opening and closing HTML and all of our email headers are set right so that the email is interpreted as HTML, we can do whatever we want in the EDD purchase receipt in terms of outputting HTML. So let's take a look at that now. We have this function called EDD apply email template. And this is attached to our filter, which you can see right here. Add filter, EDD purchase receipt, EDD apply email template. So we only want to look at one part of this. You can ignore the top half because that's just for the admin previews. But we then have, down at the bottom, is nothing more than body equals apply filters, EDD purchase receipt, followed by the name of a template. So the name of our template, if we look over here, we have this drop down, and we have default, no template, postcard, clean, smooth, purple, etc. Well, if we look at this source, we see that each one of these has a value, default, none, postcard, clean, smooth, etc. So because those are there, let's say that we're running the postcard template. What we're going to have is body equals apply filters, EDD purchase receipt underscore body, or sorry, underscore postcard. And so whatever function that we have attached to that particular filter, to the EDD purchase receipt postcard, is what's going to generate our email, or sorry, our HTML. So let's take a look at how the default template works. So this is the default template that we have right here. And if we look here, here's our default template. It's very simple, it's very plain. And all it does is attach to this action. Actually, sorry, I got ahead of myself. We have to apply the filter, and then, where's my action? Oh, let's see. Oh. Now I'm losing myself. It's in here somewhere. There it is. Okay, sorry. So it's right here. So do action, EDD email template, and then followed by the template name. So there's two steps here. I missed one. So first of all, we're starting an output buffer, and so this is the function that first ties into the email receipt. So the contents of the email are passed here in body. We start up an output buffer so that we can execute anything we want tied to this action. By execute, I really just mean that we're going to echo HTML. So then we take the contents of the output buffer and store them into template. Then we pass all of that through our filter and also a string replace. Okay, sorry, got ahead of myself. So now let's take a look at this. So this default email template, all it does is output some HTML. So it outputs a div with some inline styling. You may wonder why we're using inline styling. And it's really only because the email clients you can't load a style sheet with them. So everything that you do when you're styling an email has to be inline. So we just output a div, we give it some styling, we output another div, give it some other styling, and then in the center we just have echo email with curly brackets. And if we look up here, we see that this right here makes that happen. So we say email equals string replace that tag with the body. So all that's saying is let's take this tag, which is basically just a placeholder saying this is where the content of our email should be, and we're going to replace it with our body content, which we've already, which has been passed through this filter. Okay, so that may seem a little bit confusing. I went all over the place here, but I want to look at and show you a little bit further now. So we have this other filter right here called body equals apply filters, EDD purchase sheet followed by the template name. So this filter just allows us to attach additional styling after the contents of the email have been passed in. It allows us to apply styling to the contents of the email before the email placeholder is replaced. So that allows us to do things like style paragraph tags and things like that. So if we look at the default email styling, we have EDD purchase receipt underscore default. So one thing that I did is all paragraph tags by default have a top and a bottom margin. Well, I didn't want the top margin, I didn't want the first paragraph tag to have any margins on the top. So we locate the first paragraph, and then we simply replace that tag with a p tag that has an additional styling on it. So you can do anything you want right here. You can style it, you can replace any HTML tags you want and provide inline styling. So why that's important is because this right here is all HTML is going to be passed to the template. But that's not necessarily going to receive any inline styling. This function here allows you to do that. So I want to go a little bit further now, and I want to show you real examples of these add-on templates. So it's really pretty simple. So first of all, we register our templates in our original function, in email template over here. We have a function that sets up an array of the default templates, and it passes it through a filter called EDD email templates. And that simply allows us to add additional elements to that array, which is exactly what happens here. we call EDD ET register templates. So we simply take templates, which is an array of the existing templates, and then we set up a new array called new templates and pass in an associative array of all of our new templates. So it's the template ID followed by the template name. And then we simply merge the two arrays together, and that provides us with this dropdown right here. So then what we do is we set up two main functions for each one of our templates. We have a function that does the initial HTML, and then we have a function that does additional styling. So the original HTML, the starting HTML, is this one right here, EDD ET postcard. So we're only looking at the postcard template. Let me show you what that postcard template looks like real quick. We'll save setting, close that, save these changes, and now it's previous. So this is our postcard template. Okay, so we set up all of our HTML, which is basically a bunch of nested divs with some background images, some colors, some padding, margins, etc. We have a logo that gets thrown in there, so we can see this logo right here. So anyway, so all of this gets thrown in through this function, which is attached to the action EDD email template postcard. So if you recall, if we look over here in email template, let's find the spot. Here it is. We have this action called EDD email template followed by the template name. So in this case, the name is post_card. So we have this action, EDD email template postcard. And so that outputs all of the HTML. And that HTML is all stored in the output buffer, which is then stored into a variable called template. So the fact that that's stored in an output buffer is very important because that then allows us to do a string replace for the email placeholder tag, which you see right here. So we output all of our HTML, and in the very center, or somewhere in here, we have the email tag. And it's right here. So you can see that this email tag is required and is placed in every single template because this is where we want the contents of our email to be placed. So we have all of this HTML here, and then we have the contents of our email. Okay, so that does our initial HTML. So basically that creates this top part, it creates the background image, creates this bottom, but it doesn't do any styling of the text in here. So if we actually look at this, let's comment this out for a second. Let's go ahead and refresh here, and now let's take a look at this again. Notice that my inner HTML has lost all of its styling. So it still looks okay, but maybe I want a different margins, I want a different font styles, I want maybe a different default system font, etc. So that's what this function does. We basically say the email body is simply the contents of everything we have here. That's the email body. And all we do is a bunch of string replaces on it. So we simply say, all right, I want to replace every single opening UL tag with UL style equals margin 0, padding 0. I don't want any padding or margins on there. And then we want to replace every opening LI tag with a line height, a margin, a padding, a color, a font family, and a display block. We want to get rid of the default list styling. And the same thing with all the paragraph tags, all the H1, H2, and H3 tags. So all that's doing is simply doing string replaces on the HTML to create inline styling. And you can see it then goes through a filter, EDD purchase, receipt postcard, which is applied right here. So we have our initial HTML, which is set up through this function, stored in the output buffer. We then take the contents of our email body and pass it through a filter right here. Then lastly, we take the contents of our body, we take our template, and we replace email with the template itself, or sorry, with the body itself inside a template. And that's all there is to it. So this may have seemed this may seem really complex, but when it comes down to registering a new template, it's this right here. Two functions. Set up your HTML, do your inline styling. And this inline styling is actually not even required. Only this one is required. So it'll work either way, which is kind of cool. So what I like about this system is that it's if you want to, as a shop owner, you can create an email that matches your shop perfectly. There's no limitation to it that says you have to use our styling or you have to use the styling that comes with the plugin. No, you can create your own. And these are the kind of systems that I think you should strive for when you are writing your plugins. Number one, make them extensible. You want to allow other users, other developers even, to add on to your plugin or replace functionality in your plugin. So in this case, we're giving the user of the shop, the user of the plugin, the ability to replace the email templates if they want. Now, they may be doing it themselves, or they may be hiring a developer to do it. But the point is they can do it very easily. So this is just one example inside of EDD that I think is a really good example of an extensible system with a very, very practical approach in terms of for your user. It's something that the users themselves really need. Sure, we can have a function that allows you to modify the array data that's passed through it or that returns from the function, but that's going to be used by maybe only developers. This is something that really impacts the users as well, because as the main developers of the plugin, it also gives us the ability to create these add-on templates, these add-on email templates. It gives the users of the plugin an incentive to upgrade, to expand on the original plugin. And I think this particular example illustrates a bunch of different techniques that you can use, such as combining filters and actions, using output buffers to take the contents of an action and place it into a variable. I think it shows a lot of using, I guess, what I'm going to call conditional filters, basically saying we're going to take this filter but we're going to pass in a variable, so it's only this particular filter that's applied. It's basically a custom filter. So that's like what we're using to do the inline styling of these purchase receipts. We're just saying, here's EDD purchase receipt underscore and whatever the name of our template is. So any template that we register can have its own filter that applies to it. So I think all of these are pretty cool things that can be implemented into a lot of plugins, and I think you should strive for that. So taken away from this video, I really don't expect you to all of a sudden have this great understanding of, oh, that's how this system works, or that's how I build these systems in my own plugins. No, I mean, it's complex. I mean, I spent a few days building this system. It took me a while to get it all figured out and working. But once you do, it works really well. And so I would ask you to challenge yourself to start building these kinds of things into your plugins. And keep other developers, keep your users in mind in terms of customizing the functionality, customizing the appearance, etc., without ever touching your core code. And that's the really key thing, is remember that you never want to touch the core code when you're adjusting the functionality or adjusting the behavior of a plugin.